It's not done yet. Out. Get out.
Hi, I am Mickey Clements, and I used to make stuff like this. In one of my Facebook groups, a dude recently posted about an AV cable that he bought at a flea market, assuming it was perfectly fine, only to discover when he got home and unwrapped it that its previous owner had completely peeled it apart. Now this doesn't affect its functionality in any way, but it is a bit annoying and just one of those things you don't do unless you have to, and I'm sure the previous owner had their reasons for splitting the cable. But my first thought was, I bet you could fix it. I mean, there's gotta be a way to effectively unpeel it. So I wanted to do some experiments to try and find the best way to unpeel an AV cable. I started off by rigging up the cables in a makeshift jig, but immediately ran into my first issue, which was that I couldn't get the individual cables to butt up next to each other really tightly. But that was easily solved by applying some additional tension to the middle of the cable, and I just did that by taping it down. And that brought all three cables nice and tight together. And with the cable rigged up in the jig, I can try my first method for repairing it, which is glue. On one half of the cable, I'm just going to try using some regular Elmer's glue, and on the other, I'm going to give some E6000 a try. The Elmer's glue went onto the cable very nicely and was very easy to apply, but I do wonder how flexible it's going to be. In contrast, the E6000 was its usual goopy, sticky self. I know a lot of people swear by this stuff, but I have yet to really have much success with it. As you can see, brushing it really does not work all that well, but I did have some success just wiping it with my fingers. That's it. Now we just need to wait for it to dry. Hey, do future you a favor. Close and clean off that glue cap. So while we wait for that to dry, probably the easiest way to fix the cable is just with some electrical tape. Wrap a small piece every few inches. It might not look the best, but it gets the job done. Another easy and better looking solution is cable wrap. This stuff is really great for cable management. Just push the cables into the slit of the tubing, and there you go. 3 cables become 1. Now let's check in on the glue test. While the E6000 definitely worked, it's holding the cables together nice and flexible. It doesn't really look the best, and the texture's not really that great. But compare that to the Elmer's glue, which, yeah, is just peeling and cracking right off. I know there are some PVA glues that are flexible. This obviously is not one of them. So I guess the winner is E6000? More testing. So I did a quick test with the heat gun and I was really excited. I thought I cracked the code, but unfortunately at full scale it didn't really work. It was really hard to get it heated just enough to start melting, but not so much that it would burn. I had slightly better results just holding the cable, but it still really didn't want to melt and stick to itself. Maybe another jig?
Now there's your problem.
Another jig. Trying to uniformly squeeze the cable together as it's heated and melted. Again, it almost works, but it's still no success. Maybe another jig, one that takes more than 2 minutes to build. Maybe mount the heat gun so it's static and at the right distance from the cable. Nah. One thing that does kind of work is the heat sealer. Simply press down, flip, press down again, and there you go. Welded. That works fairly well, and if you don't have a heat sealer, you should get one. They're 20 bucks on Amazon and super useful. But you can always just use a blowtorch and a coat hanger. How about the blowtorch instead of the heat gun? Honestly, pretty much the same result, it just doesn't want to melt to itself. Okay, remember the electrical tape from like 3 minutes ago? Well, that worked well. If only there was something like that, but liquid that we could brush on like glue. But there is, liquid electrical tape. Let's give that a try. And while we're at it, how about some Plastidip? Yet another thing that I've never really had much success with. Well, both went on really easily and look really good as well. After drying, I almost couldn't tell which was which. But I think the liquid electrical tape came out just a bit better, as the Plastidip ended up having some bubbles. So I think I'm going to give the overall win to liquid electrical tape. Really cool stuff, and apparently a great way to unpeel a cable. Now, unpeeling an AV cable is a pretty specific fix to need to do. Most things these days are single cables or no cables at all, but hopefully you found something useful, a new tool, or a glue that you hadn't heard of. But my sincere thank you for watching. Once again, I am Nick D. Clements, if you're wondering. Nick is short for Nicholas, and the D stands for detective. Anyway, I'm off to make something else.